All right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, almost always humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that all of us are living in a modern day spiritual paradise thanks to the Great Eight in upstate New York, the governing body. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, but most importantly, a kid raised in Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and 80s. As I like to do, just a warning here, we like to have some fun, we like to heal, we like to create some community, and really at the core, at the heart of this podcast is to help people realize they're not nuts for many of the feelings, thoughts, and observations they had as a Jehovah's Witness or are currently having. Kudos to those courageous Jehovah's Witnesses that may be listening or may stumble upon this little show. Thank you. Just be warned, there is oftentimes sarcasm, humor, and I'm just a guy, so you're going to get my perspective and my crazy brain and some of the thoughts that fly out of it. But it is never meant to offend. We just like to have some fun. So welcome in. This week, I want to talk about something that brings back some great memories and warms my heart. I am a hopeless romantic. That's just the facts. So we'll get that out of the way early. And what I'm about to share, what we're about to talk about, is strictly from my perspective, and I am a male. So I'm going to give you the perspective that I have on this subject as a man and as a teenage boy that grew up into a man because, well, that's what I am. So let me ask you something. Do you remember that first time you fell in love? Or that feeling you had when you looked across the crowded Kingdom Hall and everything went a little fuzzy and blurry in your vision? Birds chirped, animals danced, and your knees got a little bit weak because you saw what you think or thought was the most beautiful person in the world. You see her. She sees you. She smiles. As a guy, you feel a little bit drunk. And I'm sorry, ladies, you have tremendous power in this area. You feel a little bit drunk and dumb. You can't even think. Yeah, we call that thing love, right? There's just nothing like love. Or as we come to learn as we get older or mature, attraction, whatever word you want to put to it. But whatever that feeling is, it's first and foremost awesome. If we could bottle it, we'd all be walking around in a daze, day in and day out. But it's an amazing feeling. It makes us all crazy. And in a good way. It's a good feeling. It should make us crazy. That's the way we are. And again, from the male perspective, women just make us nuts. Everybody, psychology, biology, doctors, medicine has shown what happens to the male brain when he sees a woman that he thinks is attractive or that he thinks is a beautiful person, and boom, we're dumb in mere seconds. But it's a great feeling. And with attraction comes typically emotion. You begin to feel love or a desire to be with that person. You start flirting. And where you're hopeful, and again, from my perspective, but I think it's true of everyone, you hope to start dating. You hope to spend as much time as possible with that person. You want to date them. You want to see where these feelings go. You want to see if they're real. You want them to grow. You want romance. And that happens even within the kingdom halls and district conventions and the world of Jehovah's Witnesses. That feeling of wow, attraction we all get with someone. Unfortunately, as we're about to examine, takes on a whole new dynamic if you're a Jehovah's Witness. All the flirting, the romance, all that stuff that makes it special. Frankly, folks, in many cases, it just goes out the window. I know you're shocked to hear that perspective. Dating as a scene, as a thing, isn't even typically called dating within Jehovah's Witnesses. They tend to use terms like courting or courtship. And trust me, the new generation doesn't use those words. They don't use those words. But again, from my perspective, 80s, late 70s, started crushing on girls, 80s, 90s, and of course I got married in the late 80s and then divorced in the 90s. I can tell you that dating, as the rest of the world sees it within Jehovah's Witnesses, just isn't the same thing. It just isn't. And you may ask, why? That's crazy. Boy meets girl. Girl likes boy. She smiles. He's weak in the knees. He can't get enough of her. He wants to be around her all the time. You'd think it's a real simple thing, right? Not in Jehovah's Witnesses. Because as you will see, you can't just date someone you're attracted to in Jehovah's Witnesses. If you even tell someone that they're cute, or anyone else notices that you think that person is cute or you're attracted and you'd like to see them more, it triggers a set of events that are all supposed to end the same way. Marriage. If you even feel a sense of attraction or you feel a desire to be with someone more, there is only one end game in Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to romance, and that is marriage. Look, I got no problem with that. I think everyone wants to spend their life with someone that is incredibly special to them, that they're attracted to. But it takes on a little different look and feel if you're within the spiritual paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses, and it gets bonkers. It gets stupid because the mere thought or the mere action of telling someone I'm really into you has to end at the altar. It has to end with a wedding in the Kingdom Hall. Yes, you heard that right. Even though you just want to do something fun together, you want to hold their hand, you want to laugh, you want to bite their lower lip. But to even think of those things means you better be prepared to put a ring on it. So let's take a look and unpack and examine dating in the world of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I want to enter a note here. I want to send a note out. I personally believe two consenting adults of the same or opposite sex have the right to a beautiful relationship. I'm going to tackle the hatred that the governing body has towards gay people in the future. I've been working up to that episode. I've got a lot of anger in that one for me. But in this particular episode, just for reference here, I'm going to approach this entire subject of dating with Jehovah's Witnesses from a heterosexual position. Their take and their beliefs on the beauty of two gay adults is absurd, it's sick, it's hate speech. We'll get into that at a later date. But since I am heterosexual, here we go. Dating as a Jehovah's Witness is just bizarre. The only way to truly enjoy dating someone is frankly to be sitting in secret. The rest of the world, what they see as normal activities between two consenting adults just isn't if you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I recognize that that can change even within the organization based on where you may live in the world. Country to country, region to region, cultural aspects come into play in terms of dating or courtship. But from a Western perspective, it gets weird, and it gets weird fast. And before you ask, or before you spend countless hours of your life looking for commands on dating in the Bible, and more specifically in the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures, their highly doctored dumpster fire of a Bible, let me save you some time. You're not going to find a damn thing. Jesus never gave an illustration, a parable, or a gospel, or any counsel whatsoever on dating. Apparently, dating just wasn't high on Jesus' list of things to share with all of mankind. Not a big deal. I mean, Jesus also forgot and missed sharing with the entire universe that whole billions will live on a paradise earth thingy too. Jesus is forgetful, as we oftentimes discuss on this podcast. I mean, my brain wants to go off on a tangent. I imagine Jesus hosting a Too Hot to Handle show, now currently showing on Netflix. Or for those of us that are old enough to remember, hanging out with Chuck Woolery on the dating game. Nope, it all slipped Jesus' mind. This whole dating and courtship thing, he missed it, along with that whole paradise earth, billions will live there. So, again, modern day Jehovah's Witnesses rely heavily on the 8 fellas in upstate New York to make sure that he fills in the gaps where Jesus just missed a few things. So it doesn't stop them. It doesn't stop the 8 guys in upstate New York from getting involved in your dating life and your courtship and your romance. Yes, as I stated, you're not going to find anything in the Bible or newer translation on dating, but it doesn't stop these guys from going beyond the things that are written, and we're about to look at a few of those things. There are enough rules on dating to fill several publications of Jehovah's Witnesses. In fact, depending on your age and your journey in this spiritual paradise, you're probably going to remember some of the books. And there are quite a few of them that go out of their way to comment on dating, romance, everything from holding hands to kissing to what you should do. But make no mistake, the end game is you must get married. So every youth book ever published, going back to the one I studied in 1976, Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It. I love those snappy titles they had. They're all filled with counsel and literally what they call in print rules on dating, despite the fact that the Bible doesn't comment on it, and neither did King Jesus. Nope. He's busy. We're 109 years into the last days. He's got other things going. So, what is dating if you are a Jehovah's Witness? And again, we're not allowed to come up with that definition. We're not allowed to put a title or literally tell everyone around us what our romance and our relationship means. No, the God Squad in upstate New York does that for us. Let them answer in their own words. I present to you a book many will remember, Questions Young People Ask, Answers That Work, Volume 2. It has this to say as to what defines dating as a Jehovah's Witness. It says, quote, whether on the phone or face-to-face, in the open or in secret. If you and a friend of the opposite sex have a special romantic understanding and communicate regularly, it's dating, end quote. And so it begins. For the record, and without burying this entire episode in references from their publications, that by definition, dating can include notes, emails, phone calls, texting, chatting online, direct messages on social media sites. Oh yeah, they've commented on all of it. It's all dating, according to the governing body. And as you'll see, dating can again only end in one way. I want to, before we get into the further references, I think it's always fun, maybe just fun for me to go back and share what dating looked like for me as a teenager in the 80s. Because that's really when dating starts. You're a teenager. That's when the hormones are kicking in. Girls become everything, at least from my perspective, and dating and the desire to date begins. I was a teenager in the early 80s. I was actually married by 20. I know that's shocking. For Jehovah's Witnesses, not so much. I was probably old. But prior to marriage, there really isn't any sort of thing as dating. What did we do when we liked a girl in the 1980s? You're going to die laughing unless you're old enough. The really big event to get to know a girl or a sister was going roller skating. That's right. In the 80s, roller skating rinks were the hot spot to pick up that sister from another congregation or the one in your congregation that you just couldn't live without. We got her to the roller skating rink with all the other young people, and my God, we waited and sweated it out until that DJ of the roller skating rink would tell us the next song is a couples skate. And let me tell you, it was special. Look, that's all I had. So, for those of us that endured that and lived through that, was that not fun? I mean, you're like, as a guy, you're like, oh God, I hope my hand's not sweaty. You're trying to get the sweat off your hand and rubbing it on those jeans. And then you touch her hand and you can barely breathe. She's the cutest thing ever. She smiles at you, you smile at her, you're praying you don't wipe out together, or maybe you're praying you did so you could fall on top of each other, as we'll see. Nonetheless, roller skating was a big deal in the 80s if you wanted to meet a girl or a guy from the female perspective. There was also get-togethers. We would try to meet sisters any way we could. And we would do it in many ways by hitting the hallways with our bros, our pack of brothers, all let's just call it what it is, horny and on the loose at a district convention. It was a big deal. I mean, we waited all year for the summer convention. Trust me, it wasn't for the governing body symposiums. It was for those beautiful girls who went out and shopped new dresses and new shoes because they too were looking forward to the district convention. We really couldn't meet girls anywhere else. We just couldn't do it in the 80s. I don't know what they're doing now. I know in my time as an elder dealing with some of this, it had loosened up and there was other ways. A lot of it too centers around, if you wanted to date someone, around parties, or what we called in the 80s get-togethers. And there was always this crazy parents that we all liked, wonderful people who literally put their neck on the line by hosting a dance party at their house. And let me tell you, it was a monster hit. Like, it was the event of the year for a young Jehovah's Witness. Oh my God, I know of this sister. She's in another circuit, but I saw her and I about fainted. She's the cutest thing I've ever seen. And you couldn't wait to get to this party because there was a very good chance she was going to be there. And you'd start working the phones, which were attached to walls in those days, people. And you're working the phones trying to find out if she's going to be there. But let me tell you, from those parties, many a Jehovah's Witness marriage was started while dancing to Michael Jackson, Kool and the Gang, Madonna. And let me tell you what, we always hoped the host would allow for a couple of slow dances to Prince and Purple Rain. I mean, if we could get with Sister We Want You, get pressed up against her dancing, guess what? We're dating, according to the governing body, and we were there for it. I really laughed thinking this was our dating as a Jehovah's Witness back then. Anything else outside of this, folks, it was just sin. And trust me, we sinned. There was all the sneaking away, the finding a way to get outside the house and steal a kiss. All of that, though, was outside the dating rules. But the lengths we would go to see a girl. I mean, I got stories that go way beyond the time we have, including so many nights outside her bedroom window with her elder dad somewhere in the house, handing her a mixtape or just staring at her in the moonlight. Let me tell you what, man, I look back, I'm not going to lie, fond of it. Just amazingly good times that every kid, teenager, and dating in Jehovah's Witnesses adult should have. But truthfully, I never really dated in traditional sense until after I was divorced and in many ways left the organization. I'm going to check myself under the bus as I always promise to do on this show. And I don't have anything to not be proud of, but there might be people who don't dig this. We'll get into it. After my divorce, I dated some sisters. I was still hanging out within the organization. And it didn't matter that we had been married or that I was a little bit older in my late 30s. It didn't matter. All the same rules applied when it comes to dating in Jehovah's Witnesses. So I want to point you to what those rules, and they use the word rules in matters of romance and dating on their current website. I do not encourage it here. You know what it is. I won't give the URL because I can't stand them. But under the frequently asked questions section, right now today is at the recording of this episode, you will find an article entitled, "Do Jehovah's Witnesses Have Rules About Dating?" And I'm going to break down not all of them, just a few of their bullet points on the website and share some thoughts, experiences, and observations around each rule. Their word, not mine. Imagine in the matters of love, romance, flirting, that feeling you get when you're with someone special. These guys in upstate New York have found a way to not only publish billions of pages of books on the subject, but also to create rules. Rules Jesus never mentioned, still hasn't come back and mentioned, somehow slipped his mind. Unbelievable. So I want to take a few of these bullet points. Bullet point 1, under the rules for dating in Jehovah's Witnesses, it starts by saying this, and my God, does it start fast and furious from the first bullet point. It says, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the principles and commands found in the Bible can help us to make decisions that both please God and benefit us. We did not create these principles and commands, but we do live by them, okay? Consider how some of these relate to the subject of dating. Remember, Jesus does not comment on dating, courtship, any of it. But here's their principles and commands they've lifted from the Bible that they think apply to dating. Bullet point 1, marriage, Marriage is a permanent union because Jehovah's Witnesses consider dating to be a step toward marriage. We view it seriously. And so it begins. Dating, that feeling you get when you see someone you just have to be with, begins to be painted into a corner. And in my personal opinion, dating is a special kind of prison in Jehovah's Witnesses. And not only this bullet point, but the next one illustrate that. Why do I say that? A, you can see they start a bullet point on dating with marriage. Wait a minute, hold tight. I just saw her. She has these big brown eyes. I'm about ready to collapse. She smiled at me. No, dude, to even pursue that or to look at her and smile back, guess what? Everybody's watching, and you better be thinking about marrying her or him, as the saying goes. And the worst part, and why I say that dating is a special prison in Jehovah's Witnesses, from the word go, it's not like you have the catalog known as the universe of people to choose from. Your dating pool is limited. You can't even remotely consider anyone that isn't a Jehovah's Witness. It doesn't matter how amazing they are or the kind of person they are, their character. If they are not a baptized Jehovah's Witness, you're going to get counseled and there's going to be problems. You cannot consider dating, much less marrying someone who isn't a Jehovah's Witness. So if you flirt with someone, send them more than one text message or, oh my God, tell them you like them or they're cute. Guess what? You're dating. I can't get over this. From the second you notice someone or even start talking to them, the rest of the congregation goes into hyperspace mode and it begins to filter through everybody's life that you and the other person are dating. Other people will start asking if you're ready to get married. For many younger people, they just want to talk to someone they find attractive. And even if they decide they're not interested, oftentimes because of this dynamic that you started dating, you need to get married. Oftentimes among Jehovah's Witnesses, you'll see the tragic decision made that people who may not even really be into each other, they'll continue to see each other date because they almost feel trapped by everyone else's expectations in the congregation. Because to break up with someone, to hold their hand for a couple of rounds of roller skating, the next week not, starts the rumor mill almost immediately. And then, of course, it never goes to, hey, they weren't compatible or they decided to just be friends. No, it goes to, oh, they messed around. Let's get the elders involved. They must have done something sexually, and now they're not together. That's immediately, I'm talking 0 to 60 within seconds. So dating among Jehovah's Witnesses, let me just get it out of the way. For the most part, again, try not to say it's an absolute, but for the most part, it isn't fun. From the first date, from the first time you see her and you just have to be near her or talk to her, you're planning the wedding as a Jehovah's Witness. That's it. I'm not kidding. You saw it in their own words. Bullet point 1. If you're dating, you better be thinking about getting married. You might just be hoping to steal a kiss, and everyone else in that congregation is planning what kingdom melody they're going to play as you walk down the aisle. That is literally the truth. Imagine a world where you just want to get to know someone. You want to know what their favorite food is. You want to know what their favorite music is. Do they get up early or do they like to sleep in? Do they like pizza or do they like spaghetti? Nope. Toss it all out. Not that that doesn't happen. It's just that that's not the end game. Dating a Jehovah's Witness literally means you have looked at someone and immediately, by the governing body's standards, thought, oh, I should only ask her out if I think I could marry her. What? You have no idea. You have no idea. And what this leads to is young marriages. Immature boys and girls, men and women getting married. And then because of the rules surrounding marriage, they're locked into misery for their entire lives. And don't think for a minute my time as an elder was spent on dozens of relationships that started out as dating as a Jehovah's Witness. They got married because they thought they had to and were supposed to, and they can't stand each other. And let me tell you, a special note here, there was a time, and in print they've loosened up a little bit on this, there was a time when breaking off an engagement with someone suddenly became a congregation issue. The elders got involved. Like, we've decided it's not going to work. We're breaking off this engagement. Boom. 2 brothers, B school. Why are you breaking up the engagement? What happened? Did you touch each other in naughty places? What's going on? This is a reality as a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not exaggerating. There was a time they were hyper strict on that. Today, I'm not as certain. But in my era, they certainly were. I take you to the Awake of January 8th, 1977, pages 8 through 12, which says this. Courtship should be a time of happiness. You think? You think? Yet, if the flowering tree of spring brings forth bad fruitage later, the remembered blossoms are small compensation. It is good to be able to laugh and have fun together. To walk by the seashore and just talk and talk can be very meaningful. Still, you need to remember that courtship has another purpose: preparation for marriage. If your courtship includes such practical things as shopping together or studying together, gee, I wonder what they want them to study, you are better prepared for the crucial transition to matrimony. End quote. There's the counsel 2 lovebirds get from the governing body. And I mean shopping? Oh, God, I'm screwed. So you want to go to a concert together? You want to dance? You want to have a cup of coffee? You want to go skiing? You want to go on a hike? Listen, the mere thought of it, you better be prepared to marry that person. That is the counsel from the Great 8 in upstate New York. You can't just see someone and go, oh my God, those big brown eyes, I've got to know her. You can't just do that and find out what she likes and what she hates. You can't do any of that unless you're planning to put a ring on it. That's it. Make no bones about it. There it is in print. And that culture in the dating world of Jehovah's Witnesses lives at this very hour. But take a look at bullet point 2 on the FAQ about dating rules in Jehovah's Witnesses. It says, dating is only for those old enough for marriage. Such ones are past the bloom of youth or have passed the peak surge of sexual desire. 1 Corinthians 7:36 is quoted. Are you guys ready to have some fun? First, let's discuss the bloom of youth, so poetic, as found in the cited scripture at 1 Corinthians 7:36. You should only be dating to get married, and you should only be thinking marriage and be old enough to follow through on it. And by the way, you have to be past this bloom of youth thing. And it says this in 1 Corinthians 7:36. I want to make sure I read it out of the New World Translation. It says, quote, "But if anyone thinks he is behaving improperly by remaining unmarried," dating's out the door, "and if he is past the bloom of youth, then this is what should take place. Let him do what he wants. He does not sin. Let them marry." End quote. What, we can't date? Oh, yes, the bloom of youth. That's the Bible's inspired wording, that poetic wording for being horny. That's it, folks. And that's probably an old term. I'm showing my age. I don't know. Jehovah's Witnesses, in word, try to discourage dating until a person's old enough to get married and, well, no longer just horny. But Jehovah's Witnesses, in deed or action, this is where it gets funny. Jehovah's Witnesses, out of the corner of their mouth on dating, as we've seen, they openly say to just be interested means you have to talk marriage. And better to do, it's better in their perspective to date and marry fast because, well, we all know you're horny. And despite sex between two consenting adults being beautiful, normal, and everything most people love, we've been shaming you on that subject all along since you were a kid, old enough to understand what sex was or is. We've shamed you on touching yourself, your body, the way you look, the way it looks. We've certainly shamed you on touching anyone else. So if you're going to date, don't be too horny. Be past the bloom of youth. But here's the problem from the strange chambers of Stacy Bellman's mind. It was a problem when I was dating as a kid, as an adult. I can't speak for everyone, but I am, at the time of this recording, in my 50s. And well, I guess the only way I can say this is I'm apparently still in the bloom of youth. How about you? Like, when does a person stop desiring intimacy and sex? I'm not going to get into technicalities on age and bodies and what happens and all that stuff. Bottom line is this. Sex is a wonderful part of the human experience. It's even better with someone you really desire. Like, you can't get enough of them. So the question then for the governing body and even the Bible in general is, when is this whole blooming thing done? Like, am I dating to wait for this to die down a bit? And let's face it, it dies down a bit as we get older. But when in matters of dating, how do I structure my calendar here? But it gets better. You know, just in case we get the following situation from the governing body. The Watchtower of November 15th, 1974, page 703, under that Hall of Fame art written piece known as Questions from the Readers, has this to say. It says, quote, "However, with some single persons, their passionate desire might put them under dangerous strains and temptations. For those, it would be better to marry than to be inflamed with passion." No word on whether you should love this person. No word on whether you're compatible. We just realize you're really, really worked up and horny. You better get married. And this is the second step into the bizarre world of dating as a Jehovah's Witness. Everything about even the dating is, of course, about sex. I'm sure you're shocked to hear that. They're obsessed with it. Like so much of what a Jehovah's Witness considers, even again in dating, it comes down to getting naked. That's it. I'm never going to come on here and condone or even condemn when or where two consenting people decide to have sex. I recommend being smart about it in many areas, from pregnancy to being healthy and clean to all sorts of stuff. But isn't that up to each person involved? You'd think it is with the rest of the world, but not if you're a Jehovah's Witness. But aren't you glad that in matters of dating, you must, it is a command and rule, be considering marriage, but it shouldn't be because you're just super hot for someone. But just in case you are, just go get married. Thank you, Apostle Paul and governing body at 1 Corinthians 7:9. Never mind if you're compatible, you have common goals, you like each other when you got clothes on. Never mind any of that stuff. We know she's got, no, I got to be careful here. She's gorgeous. You want to touch her a lot. You just go get married. Oh, man. I'm not going to read all the bullets in this FAQ rules on dating section. Some are about being free to remarry if dating, and if you're at home, obey your parents on matters of dating. But I'm going to look at two more and share some thoughts and observations around those. One of the bullet points on their website on rules of dating says this: many practices commonly associated with dating are actually serious sins. For example, the Bible commands us to avoid sexual immorality. There it is. This includes not only intercourse, but also other unclean acts between unmarried people, such as fondling the genitals of another person or engaging in oral or anal sex. Even premarital passion-arousing behavior that stops short of sexual immorality is uncleanness that displeases God. Immoral conversations consisting of obscene talk are also condemned in the Bible, according to Colossians 3:8. That's a new one, folks. As an elder, some of the old timers had no idea what to do when cell phones hit, when texting hit, when sending certain kind of pics hit via cell phones, when chat rooms hit, when calling someone and working them up, even though you might be on the other side of the planet, hit. So they had to make a rule in the dating world of Jehovah's Witnesses just for talking about naughty things. Imagine that. Jesus forgot, they remembered in the last century. But that entire piece is the real reason dating is so difficult in Jehovah's Witnesses. The very reason you want to spend time with someone is because you are attracted to them. You're attracted to them. And yes, men, female, because we're sticking heterosexual on this particular episode, that usually means sexually. From a guy's perspective, when I see a girl that I think's cute, we're mammals. This is what we're like, wow, she's beautiful. I do want to know her. I want to touch her. I want to be with her. Yeah, that means sexually. Almost all the rules surrounding dating as a Jehovah's Witness are to keep Jehovah's Witnesses from touching each other. That's it. They literally would rather two people go and get married and be locked into an entire lifetime of unhappiness than to have one single instance of mauling each other in a bedroom. They'd rather you get married, destroy your life, maybe even bring some kids into the scenario, despite the fact that you found out you're not compatible, you don't like each other, than to have you make out, let your hand stray somewhere, maybe even go the distance. The one-time event that's normal in the dating world of most adults in today's society isn't allowed at Jehovah's Witnesses. Period. If you're old enough, you remember the book. Oh man, what a book. It's crimson red. It's called Your Youth, Getting the Best Out of It. Page 145 under Dating and Courtship from 1976. This guy went through this book with an elder because I didn't have a father, and he taught me all about puberty and life. And it had these nuggets of Holy Spirit in its pages. Quote, on page 145, more often than not, dating involves some physical contact, holding hands, kissing, or something beyond that. At first, just touching the other person's hand may be very pleasurable, causing one to feel a warm glow. That's one way of putting it. But after a while, it may lose its thrill and may not have the same effect. Something more, such as kissing, may appeal. Yeah, it does. But then, that too may become ordinary, even a little stale. Why is this? End quote. Listen, I remember as a brother studying this, the brother studying with me, again, I didn't have a father, And he's reading this about kissing may grow stale, and me thinking, damn, dude, you're kissing the wrong person. You're like, kissing grew stale? Like, that might be a clue to end that dating, that courtship. But it says that it goes on page 154 in that beautiful red book to say, quote, kissing may also be a clean expression of affection between persons contemplating marriage. Oh boy. Or it may not be. Really, the question is, to what extent does passion enter the picture? Kissing can be done in a way that stirs passion to the point that a couple are deeply aroused sexually. Sexual arousal prepares the couple for intercourse, but this privilege, according to God's law, is reserved only for married persons. End quote. Again, my voice is cracking as it often does. I'm hitting puberty again in this episode. Again, if there's another type of kissing that I'd like to hear about it, my personal opinion, kissing is underrated. It's amazing, especially with someone you adore. And when you can't date as a Jehovah's Witness, how do you even get better at kissing? Boys are kissing pillows in their hand, trying to learn. Imagine dating one person, marrying them because you're kissing, according to the governing body, only to find out, or I should back up, you date a person, you're not kissing because it arouses feelings. Isn't it supposed to? But it arouses feelings. Only to find out after the marriage day or on the wedding night that they really suck at kissing. I mean, damn, I'm getting divorced. I mean, what? The question, according to this reference, is to what extent does passion enter the picture? The second I saw her? And not to be forgotten, the Bible gives no counsel on kissing. No pointers from Jesus on how to kiss. And then page 155 of this well-written book from the heavens drops this nugget, quote, we ought to be honest with ourselves. If we know we do not have strong self-control in these things, then we should not jeopardize our future or that of the other person by taking chances. Would you drive a car down a steep, winding road if you knew its brakes were in poor shape? End quote. When I studied this, I was about 12, 13, ramping up for dating, already had crushes. And I remember reading this in the late 70s and thinking, if the girl I'm crushing on is willing to make out, pretty sure I'm in that driver's seat, pedal down, zero seat belts, and come what may, I'm going down that winding road. Testosterone is a powerful thing. Oh, and trust me, at that age, none of us were considering marriage, governing body. Not at all. We were considering how we'd been staring at her for weeks and we finally get to kiss her. It's just absurd. Another place, the governing body, this is one of my favorites. This is so one of my favorites. And it also gives you a peek into my bizarre brain. Another place the governing body likes to reference in matters of dating, we're going to move off kissing. I could go down that subject, but let's move off it. It likes to reference in matters of dating in the Bible is this incredible book known as the Song of Solomon. By the way, it's a beautiful book. It's poetry. But what I'm about to share is a peek into my young brain, old brain, on this whole thing, on how the governing body takes a book of poetry and tries to turn it into guidelines on how to date as a Jehovah's Witness in modern times. If you haven't read the book or you skipped that one as a Jehovah's Witness, I can tell you that the entire book is about Solomon chasing a beautiful girl, but she's in love with another boy who is not a king. He's just a lowly shepherd boy. Cold, hard rejection, bro, for King Solomon. Welcome to the program, buddy. Any Jehovah's Witness guy felt the rejection. But I couldn't help but wonder this on the Song of Solomon. Why the hell are we supposed to be taking advice on dating and love from a dude that had 700 wives and 300 concubines? What? He's getting way more action and way more female attention than any of us Jehovah's Witness guys got. And why is this even in God's inspired photo album known as the Bible. Again, pretty sure Solomon had lots of action. And if you really want to laugh, and they point to this, go look at it in the references on dating. They point to the Song of Solomon as an inspired book. If you really want to laugh, in the Song of Solomon in chapter 6, verse 8, he is romantically stalking the Shulamite girl, otherwise known as not taking no for an answer, stalking her. But he, and apparently Jehovah and his son Jesus, want to be sure that we're getting the message. They wanted to share the following little detail, and that I couldn't help but notice in this book as a young man when they're going, listen, you did look at Solomon and the shepherd boy and the Shulamite girl. Solomon drops this nugget of Holy Spirit onto us that, again, peek into my brain. It says in chapter 6, verse 8 says, there may be 60 queens and 80 concubines and young women without number, end quote. But apparently we need to believe that Solomon only had eyes for the Shulamite maiden. And for the deep thinkers in the audience like myself, I guess he learned nothing from his father, King David, who also happened to have plenty of girls to date, to be with, to sleep with, but went out of his way to have another guy murdered and steal his wife after he'd already slept with her. Solomon missed that little nugget because he goes on, and did anyone else notice in Solomon 6:8, something they hold up as an example? At the point of the writing of this poetry, he only had 60 queens, 80 concubines, and made sure we knew he had a whole bunch of other young women without number. We know that by the time Solomon left the scene, he had over 1,000 women. I mean, you talk about notches on the bedpost. What? That he'd have to average a new woman every night for almost 2 years? What? Thanks for the dating advice, though. So Jehovah made sure we knew all about this. And even more gratefully, the governing body, as I mentioned, points to this book as a reference for how romance, dating, and everything else should go among Jehovah's Witnesses today in 2023. The guy giving the advice, I don't know, Wilt Chamberlain on line 1? Like, it's really amazing. They don't put any thought into the things they do in upstate New York. Okay. Final book of this frequently asked questions section on their website says this. The final one I'm going to consider, there's others. It says, the heart or inner person is treacherous. It can lead a person to do things that he knows are wrong. To prevent their hearts from misleading them, couples who are dating can avoid being alone in tempting situations. Note this. They may choose to take such reasonable precautions as staying in the company of a wholesome group or a suitable chaperone. Single Christians who are looking for a marriage mate recognize the risks of online dating sites, especially the risk of developing a relationship with a person whom one knows very little about. End quote. Again, isn't it interesting how the governing body operates? Dating. They throw in, you need a chaperone, and then they just chuck in this weird sentence at the end, oh, and about online dating. Is that a smart decision? All mishmashed into one bullet. So let's break this down a bit. Let's start right there. Ah, yes, chaperones. Chaperones. For me, can't resist. It gives an all-new meaning to the word threesome in the dating world of Jehovah's Witnesses. And the humorous part about chaperones, and those of us that had to deal with this, the governing body actually believes a chaperone will stop two highly charged up people from finding ways to ditch the chaperone and do what they want to do anyway. See kissing of a few minutes ago and other things. But the Watchtower of 1981, November 1st, pages 8 through 14, under the amazingly titled article, Youth, Is Bible Morality the Best Way? It says this, quote, especially when a couple is dating and preparing for marriage, do they need to watch their circumstances. Being alone in an automobile, apartment, A person perhaps living away from home by himself, in parentheses, what? Or in a secluded spot outdoors, yeah, may induce couples to become overly intimate. Note this in terms of dating, and remember, you have to be getting married. Back to the quote. One 17-year-old said frankly, anyone can say we know when to stop. True, a person may know when, but how many can do it? I can help you. None. It is better to avoid the situation. Have others there. Yes, a chaperone can give you the extra strength to dominate completely. Dominate completely over the sexual desires in your bodies when you are together. Also, set limits as to how far your expressions of endearments will go. Stick to these. End quote. I'm sorry, as an adult now, just looking back, that this was the counsel, this was the wisdom from the governing body on dating. As if a chaperone, as if a boy and a girl, and look, again, I'm a guy, I go from the guy perspective. Girls make us crazy when you're heterosexual. You don't think, you just think she's incredible. And hopefully that goes throughout life. Dating for years, marrying for years. Again, hopeless romantic. You should look at her and think, my God, she's amazing. You know, all the trials and tribulations of life, that truly should happen. But to think at 17, considering marriage, oh my God, there it is in print, folks. And B, that you're going to have a conversation, with someone else you're attracted to and say, look, here's the limits. When you're just staring at her, your heart's beating out of your chest, and her just touching hands sends you off into a completely different universe, that you're going to have a conversation about limiting yourself. But let's take a closer look at reality with chaperones and Jehovah's Witnesses. Here I go. One thing you should note, it doesn't matter your age on this counsel. They make this sound like counsel. It's a rule. It's under their rules section on their website. You can never be alone. You could be 17, 18, 19 dating, or you could be 38, 48, 58. If you're a Jehovah's Witness single and dating, you can't be alone. You can't be alone with someone. You have to be in a group, or you have to have some third wheel along that, we'll get into that. They hate their life. Chaperoning gets hilarious fast. I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses, and I know others have. They want to date so bad, they want to see someone so bad, that the chaperone becomes their 5-year-old little brother or sister. Little kids were suddenly chaperones in Jehovah's Witnesses because you can't be alone. If you want to see that someone special, you grow increasingly desperate to find someone, anyone, that's willing to be the third wheel. And it is not fun. It's all a technicality and doesn't even have to be someone that will keep things safe, if you know what I'm saying. It's a miserable job for the third person, particularly if the chaperone is also single and wants to find someone, and now they're watching their friend, birds chirping, hearts pumping, and they're going, God, this sucks. They have to sit there and help them be good when they know they wouldn't be good in the same situation. And let me tell you, little kids, easy to distract if you want to, do some other stuff. Here's some pizza, here's a video, here's some Legos, and the two people who are into each other are off doing other things. But the governing body believes that this is effective. It's effective. Jesus didn't mention it to him, or maybe he did from heaven. He said, how about this chaperone thing? And that's why it's in print. But the chaperone arrangement, no matter your age, it's all to stop two people from having sex. But let me tell you, I know of people doing things with chaperones present, with their heads turned. I know of people doing things in field service in the back seat. If two people who want to touch each other, that are into each other, are together, they're going to find a way. They're going to find a way. And they will do it most specifically as a young person dating. Sometimes not as true as you get older. You tend to mature and have a little bit more self-control. But let me tell you, I got stories of grown adults, 30s, 40s, 50s, single, divorced, start dating. Chaperones didn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'm sure you can find someone that benefited from a chaperone, but I'm not that guy. Everyone I know, including me, found very easy ways around chaperones. And I bled for the chaperone. I was a chaperone too. I mean, the third wheel on a date? Ugh. I mean, my God. And then let me tell you, silly things come into play, like, do we have to pay for them? You know, if I'm taking you out to dinner, do we need to pay for their dinner too? And that's a whole conversation on a limited budget. Let me tell you, it is a mess. It's a mess, but not to be minimized is the emotions, especially as a guy. You see a beautiful girl, you want to date her, you want to take her out. She invites her best girlfriend to keep things clean. The best girlfriend's kind of brokenhearted because she's single. The whole night, you know, descends into her being able to find someone too. You never really talk to the girl you're interested in. I'm sure this works in reverse too. The chaperone arrangement is hilarious. It is hilarious among Jehovah's Witnesses. And the governing body has this on their website in 2023, like a chaperone's going to keep two grown adults who can't live without each other from touching each other. What? I can tell you stories that would be classless that I'm not going to share here of people literally in field service, broad daylight, Saturday morning, doing what they got to do because they can't get any time together. And yeah, of course they got in trouble. We all know where it leads to. So the chaperone arrangement, still promoted and endorsed by the Great Eight, the God Squad in upstate New York. My Lord. I want to talk a little bit. I'd be remiss in this matter of dating if I didn't focus in on a really powerful observation and set of experiences I had, not only dating when I was single, but also single in Jehovah's Witnesses, I should say, but also as an elder. I'm going to say this bluntly because it actually breaks my heart in many ways. And I know I'll probably make some fun here, but it kind of makes me sick. And it's because I come from a family rather with a single mother, a sister. Dating in Jehovah's Witnesses as a woman is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And I'm not talking about the dating you do as a teenager roller skating, although that could be a nightmare too. I'm talking about as you age, as you get older, or actually, it's a blanket statement. Dating as a woman in Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're single and looking for a mate, is a nightmare. The final bullet point says this on their FAQ section under dating rules. It says, Christians who want to marry are commanded to choose only a fellow believer. Jehovah's Witnesses view this command as referring not merely to a person who respects our beliefs, but to one who shares and practices those beliefs as a baptized witness. God has always directed his worshipers to marry only those of the same faith. Marry, not dating. There we go. This command is also practical, as modern researchers have found. End quote. Didn't cite the modern research. They just said it. They're good at that. Although on this issue, I will say, yeah, having something in common with someone you're going to spend the rest of your life with is pretty important. Look, in so many ways, it sucks to be a female in Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's just male observation. I haven't been one, obviously. Not just the blatant misogyny, but also when she is single and hoping to date. It's miserable. And this rule, all of these rules, hurts a woman or the sister much more than it hurts the brothers. For many sisters, there are very, very few eligible baptized brothers they can marry. That is a fact. There are double, almost triple the amount of women in Jehovah's Witnesses. The Pew Research Center study estimates that roughly 2/3 of Jehovah's Witnesses, 65%, are women, while only 35% are men. What does that mean? It means men, even undeserving men, tend to have their pick of beautiful women in Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't say that to be cool. It makes me sick. It makes me sick. A woman has to choose a baptized man to date or to marry. And there's 65% of the witnesses of the 8 million are women, 35% are men. Men. But it gets worse. Sisters are blatantly told from the stage and in publications that they are only to seek a ministerial servant, or an elder, which limits their choices even more. Those numbers they're desperately trying to find ministerial servants and elders now. Last annual meeting, they're going to appoint MSs as teenage boys, and they're going to appoint elders in their early 20s. Imagine that. That's how few there are and how desperate they are. But a sister who wants to date and have a romantic relationship is told she needs to seek one. So what this means for women in Jehovah's Witnesses and datings is sisters will often settle for the first guy that shows interest. Why? There's several reasons. She's a normal young woman. She wants affection. She wants sex. She wants to have a family. Imagine that. She wants companionship. Once you get to a certain age in Jehovah's Witnesses and you're a single woman, it gets bad. I got to tell you, my stomach hurts saying that. It's really weird how much this bothers me, but actually, I'm glad it bothers me. It's depressing. Because if you get to be an older woman in Jehovah's Witnesses and you haven't married, because of the unusual amount of women to men ratio, older men, older brothers can date a younger sister and marry her. And that becomes very, very difficult for a woman who's past the bloom of youth or in her late 20s or 30s. I'm not kidding. It's really not funny. It's pretty sick. She can't go outside this organization, and there's not even enough guys to choose from, much less one she could fall in love with. So you'll see sisters settle. I've even heard sisters say, he's not a great choice, but it'll be okay because the new system will fix it and everything else. Folks, it leads to miserable relationships and marriages. Let me share some stories quickly, because I know this is running long, that I actually witnessed in my time as a Jehovah's Witness and as an elder. And I'm going to chuck myself under the bus here. Full scale, under the bus, back up. Much older brother marries a woman he babysat when she was a kid. True story. As soon as she was of age, past babysitting age, I know where we're going. He married her. Disastrous marriage. I saw a much older woman, 25 years older than the man, and divorced, marrying a young brother in his 20s. He molested her daughters. I've seen a sister divorces an unbeliever. She's set for life in middle age, financially, from her unbelieving husband she divorced, but she's lonely and wants companionship. She marries a brother that wipes out and cuts off all her financial support from the ex-husband. Their relationship is awful. She's trapped. Beautiful sister marries brother her age, finds out some horrific physical, mental, and emotional things sexually. They're very incompatible. Cheating, disasters follow. Disfellowshipping, shunning. I've seen so many women date and marry the first brother that shows interest, afraid that another one won't come along. God, that makes me sick. It's so wrong. And then I'm going to have my own experience, and I'm going to chuck myself under the bus real quick. When I got divorced and I was a single elder, and I'm really not sure I should share this, but I promise transparency, I only dated younger sisters. That's the truth. I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and I dated sisters in their late 20s, early 30s. I'm not an ageist. I don't have any problem with big age gap marriages, relationships. I think they can be amazing. I literally don't care. I'm being honest about that. And so I'm not embarrassed by that. But I, too, was part of that dynamic. It's what happened. And so I'm going to share it. I'm going to be honest. It is incredibly difficult for a woman to date in Jehovah's Witnesses. It's incredibly difficult, and it makes me sick, and I have to mention it here because some of those women stay single for life because no brother ever might show an interest, or they never have enough brothers where they live to even meet a nice guy. Even meet him. I know really nice, sweet sisters that are still single, at least at the time I was in many years ago, that stayed single because they just didn't meet anyone. There was no love connection. There was no brothers around. You see it in every congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, folks. A back row of sisters ranging in age, comforting and being together and supporting one another because they're single, which impacts them emotionally, financially, you name it. I got to get serious on that for a minute because it's really bad. that the governing body hands down a rule that you can only marry a baptized Jehovah's Witness. And trust me, many sisters go outside that. They marry an unbeliever. Some of them get disfellowship for obvious reasons. Then they come back, but at least they have a husband. And by the way, some of those guys are great. Subject for another show. Great, great guys. Great guys. In conclusion, because I'm running off at the mouth here, that final bullet mentions online dating sites. I got nothing on this. I was made aware of them as an elder based on age. And we had sisters that were really burned and hurt by brothers and men on those sites. Typically because there's men on there, likely not even Jehovah's Witnesses or baptized, certainly not in good standing, jumping onto the site and seeing all these beautiful girls who were single. I remember at one point, due to a judicial matter, looking at jwmatch.com. Is that still a thing? I don't even know. And just thinking, hey, what a terrible website as a guy who builds them. But how awful it was. There were all these beautiful sisters, and they didn't have any brothers, so they're on JW Match looking for a guy. Just horrible. I would have had a lot of fun building profiles on those horrific Jehovah's Witness websites. I can see it now. Hi, I'm Stacy. When I'm not standing next to a book cart, I enjoy memorizing the 12 apostles' names, making homemade wine like my King Jesus did, and playing kingdom songs on my guitar. My latest projects include reading Revelation and mapping out how many steps there are between each of the 7 congregations, learning all of Stephen Lett's facial expressions, and building a Lego version of Noah's Ark. Please don't swipe right unless you're in the right hand of God. I just pulled that out of my ass. So there you go. Dating. I could probably go on for another 30 minutes. I will spare you. But love. Ah, love. That incredible feeling all of us as human beings get. Love in Jehovah's Witnesses, folks. Something that should be so natural, so fun, has the potential to become an absolute nightmare. Things such as being shunned because you like touching each other. Things such as a lifelong marriage to someone you never really liked. Dating someone and being pushed into marriage as a teenager. Dating someone, getting married to them and finding out they don't like sex or they're a bad kisser. That's divorce for me. Dating someone with a chaperone present so you never really get to talk to the other person, and once you're married, you find out some very disturbing things. Can't laugh on that one, I've seen it. Dating someone and the entire congregation is part of your courtship. They're all involved and have opinions. Ah, yes. Love and dating in Jehovah's Witnesses. The governing body will tell you how to date. You will follow their directions. And as a hopeless romantic myself, all the joy is likely to be stripped out of it. And make no mistake, you're flirting, not with someone you can't take your eyes off of, but you are flirting with disaster. A lifelong unhappy marriage, and if you break the marriage, shunning from everyone that you know and loves you. As heartless as all of this sounds, am I the only one that wouldn't love, and I mean love, to see a Jehovah's Witness dating reality show on Netflix? It's both tragic, it's a train wreck, it might have some laughs, but get your popcorn, folks. Jesus and the 8 guys in upstate New York are watching, and they're going to tell you how to do it. They're going to tell you, on all matters of the heart, how to date someone. They're going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to lock it up there this week. I want to thank everyone for listening to another long-winded episode. Hopefully it wasn't another rant, but I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to hearing some experiences via social media, YouTube, you name it, Twitter, for this little podcast, Surviving Paradise. Really appreciate the support. I'm sure I'm going to think of 100 other things that surround dating in Jehovah's Witnesses as soon as I stop recording, and I may bring them up in a future episode. But wherever you may be, thanks again for listening. Be safe and be well. We'll see you next week.